everyone, this is Jinlin. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm gonna show you how to make this embroidery piece. You can see the design is inspired by the embroidery tools and materials, and I use 8 essential stitches that are commonly used in embroidery. Because of that, this project works perfectly as an embroidery 101 guide for beginners. I'll be dividing this project into 3 videos: the preparation before the embroidery, the stitching process, and the finishing steps. Otherwise, the video would be a bit too long. In this series, I'll walk you through the entire process step by step, and we are going to make this piece together. If you are new to embroidery and don't know where to start, or if you are an embroidery lover and looking for a pattern inspired by embroidery tools and materials, this video is for you. If you like to support my channel, please like, comment, and subscribe. I've also added the link to my Etsy shop in the description box below if you like to check out the pattern. This video is the part 1 of this series, the preparation before the stitching, which I think is as important as the stitching itself. So let's start with a simple question. What do you actually need to begin an embroidery project? For beginners, this is often the part that holds us back. You don't know what tools to buy and you don't want to waste your money on the raw materials. I totally get that feeling. I recently started learning knitting. My goal this year is to knit a sweater for myself, but at this moment, I'm still stuck trying to choose the right needles and yarn. So here are the materials and tools you need to start almost any embroidery project. Non-stretch fabric, an embroidery hoop, embroidery needles, embroidery floss or thread, a pattern, transfer paper, a heat erasable pen, a pen or pencil, and a pair of sharp scissors. A pin cushion or needle minder is optional, but it's really helpful for keeping your needles in place. Washi tape or any kind of paper tape is also optional. I usually use it to keep the transfer paper in place while tracing the pattern. Every artist has their own habits and preferences. This is just my basic setup. Each of those tools also has many different options. In the future videos, I will talk more in depth about each category because there's quite a lot to explain. But for today's video, we will start with the basics. For the fabrics, I recommended using cotton, linen, or cotton-linen blend. Those fabrics are non-stretchy and can hold a nice tension in the hoop. The weave is tight enough to hold stitches well, and they are also very forgiving for beginners. Another reason I love them is their natural texture. Here I'm using a piece of white pure linen. Just look at how beautiful it is. Before we put the fabric in the hoop, we need to pre-process it by washing it beforehand. There are 2 reasons for this. First, it helps us create a clean and neat surface for embroidery. Second, it prevents the fabric from shrinking later if you wash your finished piece, which could loosen the tension of your stitches. To do this, simply soak the fabric gently in lukewarm water, then drain the excess water with a towel. I usually either clip one side and hang it to dry, or lay it flat on a dry towel. Once the fabric is dry, we can transfer the pattern. There are many different ways to transfer the pattern. What I usually do is use transfer paper. I've already printed out my pattern. I place the transfer paper on top of the pattern, secure it with washi tape, and then trace the lines with a pen or pencil. Either one works, as long as the color or texture is different from your heat erasable pen, so you can clearly see whether you've traced all the lines. After that, place the transferred pattern on the fabric, adjust it to the position you want, and trace it again using a heat erasable pen. Remove the transfer paper, check for any unclear lines, and go over them again with a pen if you need it. Now we can put the fabric into the hoop. Place the fabric over the inner hoop, tighten the screw, and gently pull the fabric until the surface is flat and evenly tensioned. Once everything is ready, we can start stitching. For thread, I usually use DMC cotton embroidery floss. It's affordable, easy to find, and DMC has a good reputation for its quality. Each floss has 6 strands, and you can separate them to use as many strands as your pattern requires. For needles, there's actually a lot to talk about, but today we will focus on one type that works well with regular embroidery cotton floss. For beginners, I recommend starting with a pack of sharp embroidery needles in a variety of sizes. Sharp needles can penetrate fabric much more easily than round or blunt needles. When it comes to size, it really comes down to personal preference. You really don't know which size you prefer until you try a few. For example, I have my needle cushion here. I most often use the size 5, 7, and 9 according to the DMC sizing system because I usually use 1 to 3 strands of floss. Of course, different brands might have slightly different numbering systems, so don't worry too much about the exact size number. Here is a DMC needle pack as an example. I have the size 3 to 9 and the size 1 to 5 pack. I've already taken a few needles out, so the pack isn't full anymore. You can see that the smaller the number, the larger the needle. For the MC sharp embroidery needles, they usually use odd numbers like 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9, which makes it quite easy to tell them apart. And you might be wondering, if I don't have embroidery needles, can I use sewing needles instead? The answer is yes and no. You can use a sewing needle when you are stitching with 1 or 2 strands of floss. When we're sewing fabric, we usually only use 1 strand, right? Personally, I use sewing or quilting needle quite often when I'm working with a single strand because their tips are even sharper. That makes it easier for me to place the needle where I want it to go through the fabric. However, if you compare them closely, you will notice that the eye of a sewing needle is much smaller than the eye of an embroidery needle. If you try to thread more than 2 strands through a sewing needle, first, it will be quite difficult to thread. Second, even if you manage to do it, the small eye may fry or damage your thread. So in general, it's best to choose a needle whose eye is larger enough for your thread to pass through smoothly. Now everything is ready, let's go ahead and start stitching.